It is now my pleasure to open the first panel of the day. The structure for the panel discussion will be a 10-minute presentation by each panelist, followed by a joint question and answer. I'd like to introduce you to this session's moderator, an Air Force veteran, ASU MBA supply chain student, and fellow Chain Breaker Committee member, Ruben Sanchez. Ruben?
Thank you, Jessica. The speakers for this session were selected because they bridge consumers and corporations on a very tangible product. Our first speaker is Erika Ferrin, Senior Director of Marketing, Development, and Communication at the Sustainability Consortium, also known as TSC. TSC is a global nonprofit organization transforming the consumer goods industry to deliver more sustainable consumer products and is the only universal and industry-wide science-based solution to help companies come across the full spectrum of their business operations. Their clients include companies like Walmart, Campbell's, PepsiCo, Kroger, P&G, Henkel's, Amazon, Walgreens, and many more. Erika's main role is to set the marketing and communication strategy for TSC and create communication platforms to support our speakers, members, and partners and researchers. Today, she will be sharing the research on benchmarking labor rights by industry. Welcome, Erika.
Hi, Ruben. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share a short presentation so you can follow along. All right. So again, my name is Erika Ferrin. I'm from TSC, or the Sustainability Consortium. Let's see here. Okay. So what is TSC? TSC, as Ruben introed, is a global organization of diverse stakeholders, and he mentioned some of the names of our members. We also work with big NGOs like WWF and EDF and the Nature Conservancy. And we work together to use the best sustainability science to help companies make the everyday products we use better, more sustainable. So we really focus on the things that you buy: clothes, food, computers, shoes, anything you can get in a Walmart store, on Amazon, all those kind of things. That's what we focus on. We also operate that climate change is caused by the manufacturing of consumer goods, so greenhouse gases and things like that. You can see some stats here. And we know that to create change on a global scale, we need to work with these large companies, as well as small ones, as well as NGOs, to really incentivize and support manufacturers and their suppliers to adopt new practices and really design more sustainable products. So here's our theory of change, and I'll walk you through this diagram so you can sort of understand where TSC comes from. But right there in the middle is the retail sales. So that's, if you go online at Amazon and buy it, if you buy things at your local farmer's market, if you're going into Sprouts, anything like that, anywhere that you buy. And on the left side are all the companies, the manufacturers making those products. And on the right side are all the consumers, you guys buying things. So we operate on a theory of change there that years ago, we were about 10 years old, so it's our 11th year. We thought the signal went from the retailers to the manufacturers and suppliers to create more sustainable goods. But what we're seeing now, 2021, and as you guys all know, that there's increasing pressure coming from consumers on brands and retailers to create consumer goods. And that's great for TSC because the stronger the signal to create those consumer goods, the better. So think of yourselves there on the right side. It's really important that you guys are putting pressure on the brands, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So why are transparent supply chains important? So if you're unfamiliar with supply chains are sort of what we use to produce products from the farm, from the smelter, from anything that you use to produce a product, all the way through the end of life. So what you as a consumer do when packaging, when you're done with the product, anything like that. So workers' labor is really the reason we have consumer products, as they talked about in the last session. And we know that a sustainable world demands that workers throughout the supply chain have their safety, rights, and dignity protected. What you're seeing here is one of our research supply chains on wild-caught shellfish. And you can see the really, really small orange circles are all the sustainability issues that we at TSC have identified to help companies address sustainability issues with big impact in their supply chain. And there's a little orange heart up at the upper right part of that. supply chain, and that's where there are issues with worker safety and rights that we'll talk about in a minute. So if you think about wild-caught shellfish, most people want to look at packaging, want to look at the stores that they're buying in. But with TSC research, we help companies understand that the biggest sustainability issues are way up in the supply chain, on the shipping vessel, in the manufacturing plant, in the packaging plant. When companies can address issues there, it has such a huge impact. And you can see that there's more sort of red bubbles on the beginning of that supply chain than the end. So that's what we do at TSC. We help companies focus on what the biggest impact sustainability issues are. So we use KPIs, key performance indicators. These are questions to help companies see sustainability issues in their supply chain. So many companies, you would be surprised, have no idea where their commodities, where the materials come from. So we help them see all the way back to the beginning of their supply chains, what are the issues? And we operate under what gets measured gets managed. So if a company is able to measure everything in their supply chain, they will manage the issues there. And we actually have a lot of research to prove that that is true. And once companies agree to manage their supply chains, they actually improve rapidly in sustainability. So we use these KPIs to help brands understand labor rights issues in their supply chains. And we define labor rights issues as issues like worker health and safety, forced labor, unequal pay, child labor, modern slavery, and we have many, many more. And what you see here is a KPI question that we ask dairy suppliers. So we're asking them how much of their supply chain can they identify different potential worker health and safety issues in. And then we score them based on these scores. So companies that score really well have full visibility in their supply chains. They know what they look like. They know where the issues are. And companies that are not doing very well probably answer A there, like they cannot determine, they don't know, nothing. So we really help companies focus on the issues, and then we help measure them and help them improve. So how a product is made affects companies seeing and addressing labor rights, obviously. So here's two examples here. We're looking at chicken and we're looking at lettuce. Now the supply chain for both of these products is actually quite short. So if you think about lettuce, it grows in a field, somebody picks it, puts it in packaging, and you buy it. That's a real short supply chain. A lot of companies, poultry companies, that the chicken that you buy in the grocery stores, they own the farms. So they know exactly what's going on there. These are supply chains that are very transparent and therefore can see their labor rights issues much better than others. Longer supply chains like, say, a laptop or a cell phone have hundreds of different pieces that come from all over the world. These are really, really simple supply chains, and that's why they score relatively well on our particular assessment for those things. And then want to talk about certifications really quickly, as they're really important to the work that we do. So certifications really help companies track compliance with labor rights standards. And a certification can be tagged to a bunch of materials, so everyone in the supply chain knows that it was sustainably sourced. I put some certifications here at the bottom. You probably recognize most of these. These are really popular certifications. And they're popular for a reason, because they're backed in good science. Consumers recognize them, they respond to them. They're good signs of a product. And now we're looking at two different products here. So we're looking at wild-caught fish, and we're looking at textiles. And you can see that the score there is very different between the two. And I'll talk a little bit about why. So wild-caught fish, there is a certification called MSC, the Marine Stewardship Council. They certify labor rights issues in seafood supply chains. However, MSC certified is not something that consumers really know that much about. It's not something that shows really bright on packaging. It's not something that stores really tout when they're selling seafood when you're going to buy it. But it's a certification that is really, really important. But because the consumer awareness of that certification is low, a lot of seafood suppliers and retailers aren't necessarily beholden to that certification for the things they sell in their stores to you. On the other hand, textiles are certified by an organization called SAC, which is the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. And they have something called the HIG Index. And a lot of retailers require textile producers, so the clothes and upholstery and shoes that you wear, need to go through this certification process, this HIG index. And because of all the issues in child and slave labor in textiles, the industry is not only requiring manufacturers to be part of this index, but consumers know about these issues and they demand that the clothing and the shoes that they buy do not contain labor issues. So in this particular instance, wild-caught fish has a great certifications, not widely used. Consumers are not quite demanding it. Textiles has a great certifications. Consumers are demanding it. They're really on the ball there and scoring very well. So what can you, an individual consumer, do about it? There's a lot of information, and they touched on it in the last session, actually. Learn more about the brands that you purchase by reading their company corporate social responsibility reports. They're usually online. Most companies will have their sustainability strategies or the CSR reports available for anyone to look at. If you're a big fan of a particular brand or you're wary of a particular brand, go online, read their reports. What are they doing in sustainability? What have they done? What benchmarks have they hit? Are they behind? All those things. As a consumer, it's really important to understand that. This is really simple, but you also want to know who's making the product that you buy. Don't be fooled by marketing. I work in marketing. We're real tricky. The products that you love may be marketed as natural, organic, all those kind of things. Who owns that brand? What is the company roll up to? What are they doing? There's lots of brands like Burt's Bees and Tom's of Maine, those kind of things that have very naturally focused marketing package. And some of those companies are doing really amazing things, but they roll up to large companies like Clorox, who you may disagree with. So definitely take a look at where your products are being made and who is making them, and educate yourself on labels and certifications to understand really the true difference between certifications and marketing. It's really important. There's a term that you guys probably all know called greenwashing, where companies try to market sustainable products to you that are not, in fact, actually sustainable. And we like to use the word conscious consumer. We all have to purchase things, throughout our life to sort of work and play and love in society. Be conscious of what you're purchasing, where you're purchasing from. And most retailers and most manufacturers look at their quarterly sales very seriously. So if you decide to stop buying a product that you've been buying a lot over the course of the years, they're going to see it. They're going to see it. If you decide to buy a sustainable product that you haven't bought before, those numbers are going to show. It's the loudest signal that you can send as a consumer that you support or not support companies, and encourage you all to do that. You also want to look for apps. There's a million apps on your phone that you can go in and scan. If you're particularly passionate about labor rights, there are apps that will identify labor rights issues in products in the grocery store or online that you're going to buy. Many apps are full of sort of wonky science. They just kind of troll the internet and are just aggregating it all for you. There's no methodology to it. So if you're going to download apps, you really need to pay attention to what the science is behind them. And just want to thank everybody for letting me present. So TSC is a partnership between ASU, obviously, the University of Arkansas, and Wageningen University. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Erika. You and the consortium do amazing work. Thank you for all that benchmarking and really informing us and bringing that to light. Those statistics for international fisheries are alarming. The follow-up on this particular industry, we invited Gabrielle Lout, a doctoral student at Arizona State University School for the Future of Innovation in Society. At the nexus of human rights and conversations, her current research focuses on current approaches to social responsibility in the seafood sector and advancing decent work in the small-scale fisheries in Guyana, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago. Today, Gabby will be presenting human rights abuses in the global seafood industry. Welcome, Gabby.
Thank you, Ruben, for that nice intro. I'm excited to be here with you guys today. Let me just grab my presentation. Let's see. And can I just share this window? Usually. Sorry, guys. So there's an option just to share one window. All right, we'll just go full screen. Hopefully you guys can see that. All right, so I'll be talking to you guys a little bit today about human and labor rights in the global seafood industry. So humans and nature are inextricably linked. We've seen this in several ecosystems and natural resources, especially in coastal ecosystems. Humans greatly depend on the natural environment. So coastal ecosystems provide, food, employment, and also are critical for social well-being all around the world, and especially in developing countries. So fisheries are estimated to support more than 200 million people, whether indirectly or directly, throughout the seafood industry. So this includes men and women. This can be in the form of food security. This can be in, production, as well as subsectors such as processing. So the global seafood industry is vast. And despite our knowledge on this, we really have paid attention more to the environmental side of things, neglecting accounting for these, major human dimensions in fisheries. And what we've seen in the last several years is that the seafood industry is complex. It's one of the most globally traded commodities, and this complex nature of it makes it very challenging to monitor and enforce social issues like human rights abuses and labor violations at sea. Work on board vessels can be very isolating, can be at sea for several days or even months. Additionally, traceability and transparency are challenging when thinking about how many hands seafood does pass through. There's a huge presence of migrant labor, so often they lack these social safeguards and legal status. And also there's a huge prevalence of distant water fishing, where countries will fish in other countries' territorial waters, making it very hard to manage, but also legislation gets very murky in those situations. And we're seeing these abuses for civil and political rights. So this can be work on board vessels, where there's cases of slavery and human trafficking. And we are seeing these every single week. There's new stories around this and reports of this. And this is primarily what the focus has been in the industry, is addressing these rights abuses. But these issues are much broader. So there's also violation of economic, social, and cultural rights. This can be industrial fleets from another country, threatening food security of coastal communities. This takes form of gender inequities, which is very prevalent as well. So these issues are huge in context. And all of this came to light really due to investigative journalism and research heavily in the last several years, putting these issues center stage and demanding an industry that has been really focused on environmental sustainability and economic outcomes to really advance and integrate, social responsibility and social dimensions of sustainability in their practices. And one of the huge moments around this was in 2017, the development of the Monterey framework for social responsibility. This became the shared definition of industry of what socially responsible seafood would, look like, and how we would advance that. And so it was, um, you know, dozens of experts and individuals from, nonprofits, environmental organization, human rights groups, academia. They got together and developed this. And so the three pillars of the Monterey framework that you'll see: protecting human rights, dignity and access to resources, ensuring equality and equitable opportunity to benefit, and improving food and livelihood security. And so, driving improvements around social responsibility really requires, major collaboration across all actors. And so some of the ways that we're seeing this advance is through business commitments and responsible sourcing policies and practices. So, a lot of these huge corporations have partnered with NGOs in the past to address their environmental practices and how they can improve that and develop the sourcing policies. But also now we're seeing that around human and labor rights, which is really cool to see. And also another side of that is through standards and certifications. And so assessing social performance in these fisheries and supply chains and sectors, and integrating that in how we manage this resource. And so one tool that has been widely used by a lot of folks in industry and has been something that's been really important in my work is the social responsibility assessment tool for the seafood sector. And this was co-created with Conservation International and other folks. And it's a risk-based approach to assess social performance in areas of improvement. And so it is founded on the Monterey framework, incorporating those three pillars. And it looks at, the prevalence of risk in these supply chains or an individual community fishery to really highlight these areas that need to be a priority with whatever intervention, improvement project, or management approach you're taking. And so a really cool story around this is in Guyana, a really small country that doesn't get a lot of attention in the last several years with the discovery of oil and gas. Guyana has kind of been catapulted center stage, and one of their huge priorities is to protect the marine environment. And so in Guyana, they're taking a triple impact improvement approach in their small scale fisheries. And they're going to be one of the first countries to have an integrated performance assessment with the social, environmental, and financial together to then develop a truly triple bottom line or triple impact management strategy. And so, right now we're positioned to address some of these challenges. It's already the focus of a lot of organizations, a lot of industry players, but a commitment to social responsibility is really a chance to make change for nature, but also people who depend on it. One dimension of sustainability can't be more important than the other. You really need to address these things together. So everybody at the individual level, just like Erika had mentioned, really can take a role in this and look at brands and companies that you shop with, and you're going to start to see these sourcing policies and their responsibility statements, and a lot of folks are turning more to integrate that social, which is really important. And seafood is hard to know what's sustainable and what's not, but those certifications, MSC and fair trade and things like that are always a good starting point. And as we move forward, those will be things that hopefully will prioritize social responsibility as well. And yeah, just thank you everybody here for diving into this, and of course ASU and Chainbreakers as well.
Thank you, Gabby. You're really bringing up a lot of issues that a lot of us, or at least speaking for myself, that I had never even really thought about or knew that was a thing. So thank you so much for bringing that to light and really informing us on those issues. Now let's invite Erika back to the stage and we will open up to the audience for questions. Awesome. So first question, do you have any apps that you can recommend?
So I can take that one and then Gabby can chime in. So there are so many apps out there, just so many. The ones that I like personally, EWG is a good one that lets you search for products that you're about to buy, and it tells you the ingredients in there and the potential issues. There's apps like Ethical Barcode that you can download, and basically you decide what particular sustainability issues you really care about, and then it helps you look for those issues within particular products and brands. So that sort of narrows it down. If you really care about labor rights, that's where you're going to go. There's also one called Buycott, Buycott, that basically lets you scan products and actually send emails to companies that you support or don't support in what you do. But EWG is really the one that covers the most breadth of consumer products that you can really look at. There's also another one called Smart Label that lets you scan barcodes when you're in the store that you can look at. And what Smart Label does is it pulls from sustainability reports of all the brands and the companies, and it puts it in one place so you can scan very quickly sort of how you feel about a particular brand or a product. So those are a few. There's many more. The last one I'll mention is an app called Joro, Joro. It's out on the market. It's very new. And you basically link it to your credit card statement, and it tells you sort of your footprint based on what you purchase. And it really, if you're sort of really trying to lower your carbon footprint and be a more conscious consumer, it sort of does a lot of the work for you. So those are just a few, but there's many.
Awesome. Thank you. And next question appears to be, is the Monterey framework the same as the Seafood Watch app for the consumers?
Yeah, so they're different. So the Seafood Watch app, again, is great. It's like a really kind of well-known seafood app. It's really focused more on the environmental aspects of things, but the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which obviously has a huge hand in the Seafood Watch app, also did have a role in the development of the Monterey framework. So they're connected in some larger way. But right now, a lot of the seafood apps and things like that don't fully account for the social aspects of things. So that's hopefully something that comes in the next few years.
Thank you. And another one is, how do you motivate farmers and fishing communities to change?
Yeah, and I think it's less about, motivating communities to change. It really kind of the way that we do business and our consumption, that's what's driving some of these, exploitative practices and, things like that. So I think motivating communities to change, really starts with just equipping them with the knowledge and the tools that they need, and the agency. A lot of workers, in cases where they're, have human rights abuses or in these situations, they often are going to be the last people to, acknowledge that and maybe even understand that. And so it's really just about, being in the community and being able to build capacity and work with them to start to manage their own resources and have that sense of ownership and responsibility. But it's really about motivating how we do business and consumers a little bit more than the community themselves.
Yeah, and just to add to that, from our perspective, these kind of farmers and growers come from really small companies. Sometimes they're third, fourth generation, if not more. They need incentives, putting in data collection resources, getting staff to answer surveys for certifications. For a grower to become organic certified is extremely expensive. They need incentives. They don't have the resources to do it. So we are working with the financial industry and large corporations to try to get low interest loans, grants, literally any kind of incentive to those kind of companies to help improve. But that's usually a great motivator.
for getting to do that. Awesome, thank you. So are we for time? Should I start kind of wrapping up? We'll do one last question, the one with the most upvotes. So if everybody could just vote for your favorite question, and I'll put the other ones on the chat. Oh, sweet. Okay. So it seems like the one with the most votes is I know climate change is increasing risk for producers like farmers and fisheries. Are you seeing a correlation between climate and labor issues?
Yeah, I can start off with this one, Erika. I'm sure I'll have something to add. Yeah, so we're definitely seeing increasing risk around this, of course, especially in fisheries. This is a huge issue. It's, a major priority. And, we're seeing communities becoming more vulnerable. With that obviously changes how they use the resource, how they seek livelihoods, and create sustainability, kind of a very cyclic sustainability challenge. And one of the things we're seeing with labor issues is that having these in a supply chain or in a community, in some cases can, exacerbate environmental issues, or when trying to approach it from another side, from a management perspective, to not account for some issues and addressing climate change, can almost hinder your efforts and the effectiveness of whatever intervention you're trying to put in place, or whatever you're trying to implement. And so there is a lot of correlation between how these two relate.
Just to add really quickly, climate change, it's sea level rise, increasing temperatures, storms, political unrest. It causes a lot of issues. And you have to think about, what are the communities that these workers live in? How are they getting to work? What are the conditions of the soil that their houses are on? It's a huge circular effect, climate change, and it really is affecting all sorts of the sustainability spectrum, from environmental to people and their homes. And it's an important question.
Thank you so much, Erika, and thank you so much, Gabby. I would like to thank Gabby and Erika again for being here with us today. You really did teach us a lot and really brought a lot of issues to light that I think a lot of people don't really think about when making purchases. So I think that's a great thing that we were able to do that.
I appreciate your time. It was very insightful.